Welcome, everybody, to Backstage at Speaking Your Brand. I hope that you're watching us live on LinkedIn today. And if you are, thank you and welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about creating your signature talk framework for your thought leadership. And so we have some guests here today. Today, we have Tenice Wehmeyer, who is a recent graduate of the Thought Leader Academy. And then we also have Nydia Marrero and Kelly Schermerhorn, who are currently in our Thought Leader Academy. And so, by the way, for those of you who are watching live, or if you even watch the replay later, stay tuned in the broadcast because we are going to talk about the Thought Leader Academy, and these beautiful women are going to be sharing with us their experience in the Thought Leader Academy and talking about sort of what they've gone through in the Thought Leader Academy, things they've learned about, and what their takeaways are from it. So we will be talking about that here shortly. But first, let me go ahead and give each of you an opportunity to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do. So welcome, Nydia, Tenice, and Kelly to Backstage at Speaking Your Brand. And so we'll start off, and I'll just go by how I see you on the screen. So Nydia, if you'll just take a quick moment and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do in your business.
Well, thank you, Diane, and good afternoon, everybody. And happy Valentine's Day, by the way.
Yes.
My name is Nydia Marrero, and I am the real estate and principal broker and founder of a boutique realty company, all-inclusive realty in Orlando, Zen Living Realty. So my job is to make dreams happen for homeowners and for sellers. And as a broker, manager, and also part of our sales force, my job is to help the clients, qualifying in finding their dream home or selling or educating them in the best options they have. And we're all about managing the stress because real estate can be a very stressful industry and there's so many moving parts into it. So my commitment and my message is for everyone to be able to do it in a Zen. That's why it's Zen vibes, Zen manner, Zen fashion. And for that, we will give you the tools so that they have a Zen experience, meaning like reducing as much as we can the stress, doing the heavy lifting for them, and hoping that, with that experience, they will tell all about us and our services. And really,
Wonderful.
that's what we do.
Yes, and as I mentioned a couple of times, I could have certainly used you a year ago going through all of that stress of buying a home. So thank you so much for being here, Nydia.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And so Kelly, go ahead and take a quick moment and tell us who you are and what you do in your business.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. So I have worked in the healthcare marketing industry for the last 10 to 15 years, and it's been exciting to see how healthcare has evolved to what we call whole person health, which is mind, body, and spirit. And so what that's really connected for me is over the last 2 to 3 years, I've become even more passionate about the mind part and mental health. And what I'm here to do is really just normalize the conversation around mental health. And I think that starts with authenticity and vulnerability.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, I think that's a pretty important conversation to be having, especially now. So I think you're at the right time of talking about this. So thank you and welcome, Kelly. Tenice, take a moment and tell us who you are and what you do in your business.
Absolutely. Thanks, Diane, for having me. My name's Tenice Wehmeyer, and I am the founder of Wehmeyer Leadership Coaching, and I focus on leadership development at the director and above level, really helping leaders design their leadership journey so they can have the ripples of impact that they want and deliver the results that they're looking for while having that whole life that Kelly even talks about, and taking care of their mind, body, and spirit in the process, because we all know how much, our jobs in the corporate environment sometimes drain us. And so I want to help leaders be more effective and live the lives they want to live in their leadership journey.
Thank you, Tenice, and welcome to Backstage at Speaking Your Brand. And I think it's interesting just what each of you has shared. Your topics sort of, although they're not the same, they dovetail nicely with one another because they all seem to touch on that aspect of, the mind and the spirit and the, how you're feeling about things and all of that. So, and in the Thought Leader Academy, we do talk about your message, or helping you refine your core message and your thought leadership message. And of course, we talk about your framework. So I know that you all did a lot of work on coming up with your framework. So maybe you can take a minute, each of you, to kind of tell us about, and I'll just kind of call on each of you, but I have personal experience working with you and through those development of your frameworks. So I want the audience to get a sense of kind of how you came up with your framework, what the meaning behind it was, and sort of how it evolved. So maybe let's start with you, Tenice, because I know you and I worked together. Actually, before you joined the Thought Leader Academy, we worked together. So you had a specific framework then. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how that came to be, what the meaning of it was, and how you came to that specific framework for your content.
Yeah, absolutely, Diane. So yes, we went through and did a VIP day back, I think in 2021. And what's interesting is when you think about your signature talk, there's a lot of different purposes for it. And what Diane really helped me do in the first round of the framework was to create the framework around the word ripple. I've always talked about everything you say, everything you do has impact on you, those around you, and beyond. And so it's that ripple effect, which has morphed into ripple leadership. But I didn't really know exactly what the word ripple really stood for, where it really kind of fit in. And so Diane helped me work through the process and designing, kind of really that into an acronym, into a framework. And so I was able to create a lead generation presentation for using Ripple and bring it into my coaching program. And then also, since then, I've actually designed an entire leadership development program that is a workshop around Ripple. And so I offer a Ripple leadership program that's a 2.5-day program for leaders to really design their leadership journey. And so that, that word has really become the framework. And then the part that's really interesting about that is taking that framework and having it be the foundation, and then how you build your presentation and your stories and your messages around that framework is really powerful, and it really helps from a speaking perspective.
Yeah. And I think you made a good point about how the framework kind of becomes that foundation. And just to back up just a little bit for those of you who are watching, this idea of a framework, and I think you sort of articulated this, Tenice, is that the framework puts sort of a structure, scaffolding, if you will, around your content to not only help you present it in maybe a more cohesive fashion to your audience, but also helps it be more memorable and shareable, because it puts it in a nice little package that's easy to remember, that can be talked about. And so it can be things like acronyms, like Tenice's, which is Ripple. It could be something like the 3 C's. It could be just a shape. But that structure of having that framework, whichever of those that you choose, gives you that solid foundation that you can build upon. And I love that has become, for you, Tenice, the foundation of the work that you do. And how did you come up with, can you talk a little bit, because I remember when we talked, I know the answer to this, but I want you to share how this word ripple came to be, what that means for the work that you do, because it does sort of carry on into everything that you do beyond just the talk.
Yeah. I spent 20 years in a corporate environment working in all aspects of employee engagement and leadership development. And when I think about ripple, you think about the ripple, the rock that goes into the water, the sand that ripples across your feet, the tsunami, the surf for the wave for the surfer. All of those different things are ripples, but they all create different impact. And so there may be a leader that is creating ripples that are like, sand on a beach. And that may not be enough for the team. that may not be inspiring and enough energy for the team. There may be another leader who is creating those, those tsunami waves that are disruptive and that are damaging. And those could be waves that, are hurting the team. And so really looking at, again, back to that, everything you say, everything you do, those impacts of those ripples are the leaders in the center of those. And those kind of ripple out to not only our teams, but our peers, our organizations, and then ultimately into our homes. And so what is the impact that is having on our personal lives when that's where we want to spend the most time with those who matter the most to us?
Yes, I love that. And so for those of you who are watching, notice how Tenice took a word that was meaningful within the context of the work that she does and turned that into the framework using that acronym of RIPPLE. And of course, RIPPLE, each letter stands for something, throughout the whole framework, but the word is connected to the work that she does and meaningful. And it's almost like symbolism. And then of course it's the acronym and the structure for the framework. So I love how nicely that is tied together. And you've pointed this out, that it can become other things too. That's the great thing about having a framework, is that it sort of gives you something that has legs, so to speak, because then you can turn it into a whole bunch of other things and build upon it, tie things to it, create even maybe other frameworks that are connected to it. So, and I know that we had talked a little bit about, for you, Tenice, you have that as sort of your overarching work that you do, but maybe there are other portions of that become other frameworks within that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So let's move on to Kelly. Kelly, tell us a little bit about your framework and how it came to be and why you decided on it.
Yep, absolutely. So one, I think that this forum is actually a really great representation of how I got to my framework. So for me, coming into the Thought Leadership Academy, I was really looking for direction and inspiration. So I think taking a step back and understanding how I even got to the framework was because there was a community, and that community was giving me feedback. It was giving me inspiration. Just hearing other people share their ideas. I was sitting there jotting down my inspiration from other people talking. And so I think a really important part of building my framework was just being in the right environment and right mindset to generate that creativity. And so that led me to my framework is the word love, which I think
appropriate
is
today.
Wonderful. Yes, for today I've got my love sweater on.
Nice.
And the beauty of the word love is mental health can sometimes carry a heaviness. And so the word love, one, just lightens the load on sometimes what can be a very vulnerable and heavy subject. But two, think about how beautiful it ties into mental health, because so much of mental health ties into our own self-love. And once we love ourselves, it can often, again, easily springboard into that vulnerability and authenticity that perhaps we were hiding from before. And so for me, the love framework has really opened the door to relatability and scalability. I think a lot of people can relate to that, which means it can scale across, multiple different audiences.
I love that. I think that, like you mentioned, mental health subjects can be very heavy. And this idea of using love as the word for the framework has such deep connections, and to whomever you're delivering the talk to, it's going to come across to them in a certain way, right? And I love that you developed it kind of in the process of us talking about it in one of our Thought Leader Academy calls, and sort of pulling from what everybody else was saying. And again, for everybody who's watching this, that is the beauty of the Thought Leader Academy, is this connection, like you mentioned, the community and people talking, and all of us discussing what the frameworks are and maybe how to define them and what it could mean. And so for you, the word love isn't specifically related to mental health. However, I like how you connected it to that idea of self-love and even maybe love for others, right? When we love others, maybe that is an act of self-love too, right? And so it does have so many connections and ways that you could use it. And it's so easy to remember. It's nice and short. it's a word that is such a warm word. And so I think it's something that will stick with you. So when you deliver your talk and you use that word and explain what each of those prongs of love means, I think it'll really resonate with your audience. So I just think it's so special that you came up with that word in particular.
Thank you.
So how fun. Yeah. All right, Nydia. So tell us a little bit about your framework and how it came to be and sort of what it means.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So for me, the framework is Zen. I'm gonna go straight to the point, which is my brand. And ironically, it came into life in one of those sessions
Mhm.
from these amazing women that are here. Some of them are here, and which to me has been a great experience because public speaking or speaking in general can be very scary. And I always known I have the skill, and everybody really does it. You just have
Mhm.
to practice, and like anything, you just practice and polish, but it can be quite intimidating. Sometimes I wish I was invisible, and I don't know why. And I'm like, no, when I met you, Diane, you reminded me when we had a short conversation. I'm like, wow, she really has a message that resonates with me. And even just speaking your brand by itself, that name really got my attention, because that is exactly what I've been wanting to do for a long time. I know I have it. I know, but it's all in my mind. So how do I make the connection between my brain, my heart, and my voice? And everybody has a voice. And anyway, so I'm very excited and very grateful. So that framework that I didn't even know what framework was, or like when I started, like, what do you mean by framework? And you explain it, and Carol, and all of the amazing women in the workshop. I've learned so much from like, use your voice. So when I was sharing, what I do, my thoughts with the group, then the majority came back and said, why don't you do Zen? And it didn't even think about it, as absurd as it can be, because it's a no-brainer, right? It's my brand. So then I started thinking about putting all the pieces together. So I came down during the VIP session, which is a 3-hour session we had privately with Diana, our coaches, and that was a very fun day, fun, emotional, everything at the same time. Exciting. So I came up with, as a realtor, right, a real estate broker, the one thing that we need to, I think, the message that we want to deliver is that we are here to have empathy, and just not trying to sell you anything per se. It's just, just trust the process, trust me that I can be that vehicle to make things happen. When someone comes to us, they are afraid, they're stressed, there's so many things. Business it's personal. And as a realtor, it's hard to differentiate when are you wearing the hat of a friend. It's like, even therapists, that we have to be sometimes. But so having that framework, it's something that's going to be very powerful. So I can always spread the same message using certain words that will have more impact. And so I can reach out to more people because of this message, because it's authentic. It is who I am and what I believe on. So to me, that's the most powerful. So the Zen, the Z stands for sappy, which I didn't even know that was a word until someone actually made it,
Yes, I think that came up during one of our calls, didn't it?
In the same call that they say, oh, why don't you do Zen? So sappy means high enthusiastic, high energy, which is the vibration that I want to connect every day, because I believe nobody wants to do business with a pessimist, right? No. So if I can be in that energy of that vibration, I am optimistic for you. I know I'm going to get it done. You are going to believe me and you're going to trust. But ultimately what you're doing is you're believing in yourself. So I'm just the vehicle. So sappy for that. E stands for, and I changed this since the last time we met, Diane. I meant to tell you, actually. I was doing a meditation and it literally popped in my head that the E should be for empathy. Because empathy is what really, I am an empath. And I'm always putting myself in the person's situation, not, want to be compassionate about people's emotion and try to bring that love into my conversations. And if someone's having a bad day, don't take it personal. It's never about you. So just try to keep that empathy, right? And putting into action to protect my client's best interest. And you can get more when you become empathic than when you become more, like aggressive. So I don't believe in aggressiveness and then finally, I think I'm gonna stick to negotiable. Sorry. So because we were saying that I want people to understand in real estate and really in life, everything is negotiable, and people don't know what they don't know, and they come to us and they don't, and if you don't empower them, that not only they have the last word, but there's nothing to lose by asking. Obviously, there are boundaries and there are things that we need to educate depending on the situation and the market condition. But I want people to believe, yeah, I can negotiate and have that, because everybody wants to get a deal, right? Like a good deal. Everybody wants to. So having someone next to you that can say, yes, anything is possible, possibilities, I think it just makes a difference and creates a safe and enjoyable process of buying or selling a home.
Yeah, I love so much about your framework, Nydia, because it's number one, it's super short. So there's no way it can be forgotten. It's easy to remember. It is part of your name, part of the business name, which is nice. Great tie-in. So it's a way to capitalize on that and helps you kind of build brand awareness as you're also delivering your talk and using this framework. But I also like that it is, you're in real estate, but Zen is not often an idea that is connected to real estate or buying a home or anything in that realm. So it is, I think, a good differentiator as well. So this is, I'm saying this because I want everybody who's watching to see that your framework can come from all sorts of different ideas. It doesn't have to be super literal. It doesn't have to be, a word that you would necessarily think of. It could be something that is, you can make the connection. You just have to find out what it is. And I think each of you have done a really great job of taking a word that you would not necessarily think of for the work that you do, but connecting it in a way that makes sense for the work you do and the way that you do it. That's the other thing about frameworks, is that each of you has taken the word and connected it to the way that you work, the style that you work, how you deliver your brand promise to your audience. So it's very connected to your individuality and your differentiator, which is so important, again, to stand out from everybody else that is offering similar services, which we know there's, always other competitors offering similar things, but it is a nice way to stand out. And so thank you for sharing that, Nydia. That's, I also love how so much has come out of those Thought Leader Academy calls and these aha moments. And like for you, Nydia, like afterward, you're thinking about it and you're like, oh, I got it. Empathy, right? So sometimes, if you're creating a framework, you don't have to be married to the very first version of that. You can work on it, noodle on it a little bit more, and then it will come to you what the right word is if you are using an acronym. So let's switch gears just a little bit then, and let's talk about, because we've touched on the Thought Leader Academy. So I'd love to hear from each of you. Well, actually, first of all, let me ask you, I don't know if you've all had an opportunity to yet deliver your talk using your framework. Tenice, I know you have. So maybe, Tenice, if you could just give us a little bit of insight into how that experience has been using a framework to deliver your talk, and how has that gone? How has it felt?
Yeah, there's actually two different ones, and I want to touch on both of them for a reason. But the first thing I want to say is, Nydia, ripples is a long word, and I changed my acronym a couple of different times, so no harm there. It finally landed where it needed to land. But what I've done with ripples is that's really been a lead generation talk. And what I think is important about that is when you think about going and speaking in front of an audience, that that's what you're looking to do. You're looking to get more clients into your business, whatever your business is. And so mine is, looking for one-on-one coaching or team coaching or leadership programs. And so when I go into the lead generation talk, the framework is structured, and I talk about ripples and I talk around it, but I only deliver the R and the I. And so as I talk about that, that what I bring to the ripple leadership, I go into the R and the I, but, in all transparency here, I leave them wanting more. And so by getting the additional letters of the acronym, they can do that by connecting with me in one session, in multiple sessions, in a long-term coaching engagement. And that's really, in all transparency, part of the lead generation component of it. And so that's probably the one benefit of having a longer acronym than others. But the other one I want to say is the talk that I worked on through the Thought Leadership Academy was more of a keynote, which I hope someday will be a TED Talk. We're going to get there, but it's more of a keynote. And it is, I think Diane mentioned earlier, different types of acronyms. And in the keynote, it's the 3 A's, but I don't even call them out directly like you do in some frameworks. And so I talk about creating awareness, accountability, and action. And so that's the structure, and that's the three-legged stool, because 3 things are easy to remember. And so knowing that you have to have awareness, accountability, and action is, part of the leadership in your leadership journey. And so I think it's important to realize that it doesn't always have to be, an acronym or a word, and that you can use it in different ways. But both of those have gone really well. And having, again, the framework is the foundation. It helps you put your presentation and your talking points together.
Thank you for sharing that, Tenice. That's a really great point about how you've still used a framework for the keynote talk that you're working on that's going to become a TED Talk, we know. But you've used that idea of a framework, but like you said, you don't specifically call it out, but you use it to kind of guide your talk. And then it still makes memorable, almost like 3 lessons or 3 main points of your talk, so that it is memorable for the audience, and it creates a little bit of structure around the message that you're sharing. So I love that example that you gave, because it does show how you can use it in a different way that doesn't have to be so necessarily like, here's point 1, point 2, point 3, but you're just using it to sort of guide the talk and take your audience on the journey of the talk that you're sharing. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and let's go to the Thought Leader Academy, because as I said, Tenice is a graduate of Thought Leader Academy, and then Nydia and Kelly are currently in Thought Leader Academy. So I'd love to hear from any of you who'd like to share, like, what brought you to, I know Nydia, you touched on this a little bit, but what brought you each to the Thought Leader Academy? What were you looking to accomplish? Maybe what goals did you have that brought you to join the group? Anybody?
Well, I'm happy to start.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I came to the group looking for support and a boost of confidence. I think oftentimes we all feel passionate about a subject, but perhaps we feel imposter syndrome, which is certainly something that I faced. And so coming to a community really helped boost my confidence, as well as the framework. Because once you have a framework, it gives you an anchor that helps you overcome some of those doubts. And that actually connects to the second reason that I joined the Academy, is because I had a lot of different ideas and thoughts around mental health, and I needed help collating those ideas and bringing them into a central theme. And so the Thought Leadership Academy has been really helpful for that. And again, I think the framework has been a really valuable tool in narrowing down those ideas and bringing focus to it.
I love the point about how the framework has given you a little bit more confidence in delivering your message in whatever form it takes, because I think that's a really great point about what having that structure can do, because then it doesn't feel like you're just kind of having a free for all of ideas that you're trying to share. It gives you structure so you can feel confident that, okay, I'm going to my audience with X, Y, and Z, right? And I know what I'm going to say, and I know how I'm going to deliver it. And so it puts a little bit of structure in to give you the ability to not feel, because we all suffer from imposter syndrome. I still do to this day when I go to deliver a new talk. That is just normal. So having that structure is almost like a little bit of a security blanket, if you will, to know that you know what you're going to talk about going in, and you know that it's structured in a way that the audience can really receive it.
Yes, take some of the pressure off.
Absolutely, absolutely. So does anybody else want to share what brought them to the Thought Leader Academy and what your goals were?
I think like when you're creating something, there's this factor of procrastination that, because you want to do it, but maybe you don't know how, and you start you start coming up with all kinds of excuses not to do it when you know that it is something that you want to do. But anyway, so for me, joining the academy was that, okay, now you have to do it. You sign up for it. You have to show up. And ultimately, I'm showing up for me, right? So it's a symbolic way of breaking through that procrastination that everybody goes through when we are just, and on the other side of that is just fear, right? Fear of not being good enough, or not having the right words, or whatever it is. But I think we're all there at some point. And then, but then what's behind that at the same time, it's beautiful. It's like courage, this feeling of accomplishment. I did it. It wasn't perfect, but I got the job done. I spread the message. So I think for me, it was more of a accountability and just get it done. Just get it done.
And thank you for sharing that. That's such a beautiful way of looking at it, is what's behind everything and the things that we all go through, but sometimes are even hard to admit to ourselves, right? Is that we're afraid, or we don't necessarily want to take the first step. So thank you for sharing that, Nydia. Tenice, any thoughts?
Here's what's interesting. I wrote 4 words down before we ever started around the Thought Leadership Academy. And I think both Kelly and Nydia really hit on all 4 of them. And it's community, collaboration, structure, and best practice. Because I felt like that's what I needed. I needed the time to dedicate that structure, as Nydia talked about, and the kind of the accountability partners. And so those are the things that I feel like really the community gave you in the collaboration around it. The other thing that I want to share, and I try to keep this as my secret, but it's just it's worth sharing, because the impact of the community and the wonderful ladies that go through this is I got a note on really early on a Saturday morning one time. And as I was going through the program, and it was from one of the ladies that was going through the program with me. And she said, "Ripple of impact is your ROI." And I was just like, it made my whole weekend, because I had never put that, and so to this day, I talk about, as a business leader, you have an ROI, you have a return on investment of the work that you do, but you have an ROI of a ripples of leadership, of the impact that you make. And so it you know what? And I'll take credit for it, but Cara, I'll give you credit for it as well. So that community is just really, the value of it is amazing.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I didn't know about that message that you received, but I think that's testament to the wonderful women that are in the Thought Leader Academy and how supportive it is. And it is a place for accountability, sharing ideas, supporting one another, helping each other to get over, this fear or imposter syndrome, or taking the first step. So thank you for sharing that message, Tenice. That's so valuable and so beautiful. I love that. Well, let's just go just one step further. And I'd love to know, and maybe Tenice, you might have already touched on this, but I'd love to know what your biggest takeaway from each of you has been so far from the Thought Leader Academy. Like, what has been the biggest thing that you feel impacted you or has impacted you thus far? Because 2 of you are still in it, but what's your biggest takeaway from your time in the Thought Leader Academy? And I'll just, let's start with Nydia.
So for me, the biggest takeaway is thoughts become something. Thoughts are there for a reason, for you to share or put in a way that you can convey whatever it is that you want, right, to increase your sales. I mean, this goes on to every aspect in your life. Of course, we're here because of leadership, but the biggest takeaway, I have to say, other than that like your thoughts, how you organize your thoughts is gonna show up in the way you talk, right? So it's important to organize them. But the biggest takeaway is that in every message that I heard in the group, there is a similarity, and that is it has to do with something about taking care of ourselves, like self-love. I hear that from everyone in the group, although we do different things. And I love it because I feel that the energy in the group is I want to be better, want to be a better version of myself. And yes, I have been afraid. I've been there, and we want to move forward anyway. And the fear doesn't never really go away, because I think that the minute you go in front of a stage, even if you have experience, I bet your heart's gonna start, but it's almost like we all feel this responsibility, sense of we have a message where we know our worth, right? Or we're in the process of every day discovering our worth, but I think some of us are almost there, and it's knowing your worth. It's going to make you move forward even when you are scared. I think that to me, I hear that from everyone in the group.
Yes.
Interesting, because we come from different industries, but the message is the same.
Thank you so much, Nydia. I love that. Kelly, what's been your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway has been that everybody has a voice, right? And I think in a unique story, one of the things that I've been most impressed with is hearing all of the different topics that everybody's bringing to the table, things that I hadn't even thought about, speaking about, and that somebody has a voice for that. And so just the encouragement, the tools, the way to bring about your message to life just reinforces that everybody has a voice to bring to the table.
Yes, that's so important. Tenice.
Yeah. I think the only thing that I will add is it's a little bit of building on Nydia is it is a safe place. So regardless of your fears, you're able to ask the questions and throw things out and test them, and people will say, "Oh, that's crazy," if it's crazy, and let you know, and then they'll come back with something that you haven't even thought of. So I think it's just it's a safe space.
Oh, that's such a good point, because it's somebody touched on the fact of it being a little bit like therapy sometimes. It does sometimes feel like that. And it is a safe space because, our stories can leave us feeling very vulnerable, as we've talked about in Thought Leader Academy, and give us that vulnerability hangover. But I think everybody does feel safe with one another and sharing, personal stories, or, asking for ideas, or saying, I'm not sure about this. Can you give me some insight on it? And just everybody being honest and sharing their real feedback and supporting and nurturing one another. So it is indeed a safe space. And to this idea of using your voice, and that everybody has a voice, and what you touched on, Nydia, which Kelly mentioned, using your voice, everybody has a voice. And Nydia mentioned that is an act of self-love. I do think that when we speak and when we use our voices, not only do we need to use our voices and speak out for whatever it is that we're, speaking on, but it helps other people, but I think it also helps us, right? So I do think that using our voice is powerful. It can feel very vulnerable, but can it also be very empowering for us individually, not just for the audience, but also for ourselves. So thank you to all three of you and everyone in the Thought Leader Academy, but specifically Nydia, Kelly, and Tenice. Thank you so much for coming on the backstage at Speaking Your Brand, and to talk about the Thought Leader Academy and your frameworks. I love, as I'm sure you know, I love helping to come up with frameworks. That's my jam. So because I love words. So if you're watching this now live or on the replay, if you want to be part of the Thought Leader Academy too, you can go to speakingyourbrand.com/academy. That's speakingyourbrand.com/academy to learn more about the Thought Leader Academy. We are enrolling for our March 14th, I think it starts, in March 14th group. So check that out. you could be part of this amazing group of women that is so supportive, nurturing one another. You can come up with frameworks, create your signature talk, and then start using your voice as an act of power and self-love. So I would encourage everybody to do that. Well, thank you to all of you for being here. I truly appreciate you sharing your insight, sharing about your frameworks, and most importantly, kind of sharing a little bit about your stories and how you arrived at these beautiful messages that you're putting out into the world. So thank you for that.
Thank you,
Thank you
Diane.
for having us.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And again, connect with me if you want to learn more about the Thought Leader Academy, speakingyourbrand.com/academy.